So now we move on to resolutions. The first resolution is 17-76. Resolution authorizing the award of transportation services for Crosstown to Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association for a 22-month term in an amount not to exceed $198,360. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Liverman. Is there a second? Well, let's
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. And now there's a question for Mr. Miller.
I'm not sure who I should address this to, but I look at the unit price, which I assume is price per ride. That is in here for the biz, $14.25 unit price per ride. I can ride in Uber for less than that. Why are we doing this? What's the advantage to us to do this?
I think that's actually a bigger question and a policy if you're asking the question on why. I know this is a service that we provided. The rate that we received of the $14.25 is consistent with the prior year's rate. And I know this is something that council wanted to look at. And I think it's a bigger kind of policy issue that council would have to give us direction on.
Well, one question I had is just the 22-month period in a time when transportation seems to be changing pretty quickly, and to Mr. Miller's Uber point, it's just legalized by the state, and it just feels like what are the escape clauses for this contract, and can we get out of them?
And why was it for so long? I think you told me this and I don't remember.
So we have the ability to contract for the 22 months, and part of it is just more of a record keeping, that instead of having to put it out each and every year, this does give us the ability to have a longer term to begin with, and there are renewal amounts that are also built into that contract or into that RFP. The escape clauses that we have are that we can reconsider it at every budget period, and if, say, when we're looking at our 2018 budget, if we feel we don't have available funding, then we have the ability to get out of the contract at that point. But it's also based on unit price per ride, so even though we've set up approximately 600 rides per month, if because of negotiations or reviews of other systems and other processes that are put in place, we can reduce the number of rides that are given per month. So we're not set on that number. That's more for an estimating and a budgeting tool.
Well, and I know you've had some discussions with the hospital. Anything to report on that? I mean, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, when's the deadline for this? Because it does feel like an off tomorrow, right?
Right. Our contract extension ends at the end of February.
I think we all are struggling with this because of how much it is, and like what Bernie said, how much it is per ride. And
Well, I think that we gave, at our last, at the morning meeting, I think we gave some direction to our administrator to meet with Susan Hoskins in regard to the program. So, I mean, I'm for Crosstown. I think it's a great program, does a great job moving folks around at I know it sounds like an expensive, but a reasonable, rate. And I think with the direction that the administrator is giving to Ms. Hoskins in regard to how to run the program or operate the program, I think that will be okay for the next session.
maybe because
The one comment I would like to make, I think at this point, what we need to do is manage, at least for this next year, in terms of the number of rides, while we do and you can do an evaluation during that period of time on steps moving forward. But one of the things that we're looking at is, one, how can we manage the rides? Two, how can we get more reimbursements for the rides. So that's the process to help reduce our costs. And I think that's kind of, to me, step one. Step two, if you wanted to look further than that, is kind of step two of that process. But I think in order to continue to providing this service, one, we need to continue the contract. As part of that process, we should be managing the number of rides. And then step two, if we want to look even closer, would be the second step.
So this contract would not interfere with us renegotiating some sort of reimbursement program from the hospital or somebody else.
Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Howard, sorry.
So, I mean, I think to that point, and I'm glad Susan's here, and we should give her an opportunity to speak if she wants. I think that's just what I wanted to clarify, is that, Susan, we would love to work with you on ways to manage this so that we're making sure people still have access. I think clearly we need to approve it tonight, but, we had some initial ideas about it. It sounded like a small percentage of the people using it are incurring a significant number of the rides, and which may be because they have very significant needs, but is there a way to manage those costs that are better? So I think we'd like to drive down the overall cost here, but we obviously don't want to harm anybody who's using the service and who needs the service, but it seems like we got to get out of the sort of fee-for-service model. I mean, this is where things are going. So I do want to be certain that if sounds like we don't want a gap in coverage, so we're going to need to approve it tonight, but I don't want to put it off till next year, because then we're always in the same thing. We're always chasing our tail. So so Mark, I welcome your comment, but the only thing that I want to push back on a little bit is not pushing it off till next year. So, I mean, if we approve it tonight, I think those of us in the Finance Committee would like to immediately start thinking about how right? Is that fair to say to members of the Finance Committee?
It is fair, but Deanna, can I go back to something you said, that the contract is for 22 months, but at the 2018 budget period, that if we find we can't afford it, if we decide we no longer want to, what exactly was the language you used that would allow us to?
Well, there's an escape clause that allows us that if funding is not available.
Funding is not available, but what does that mean? Funding through taxation, that we just?
It means your decision in the budget. You can, if you don't fund it in the budget, there's no funding available.
Okay, it's not some other magical source of funding, it's us. Okay.
And I know it would not help that much to increase the fee, but it seems like the fee of $3, I mean, when you compare it to how much it costs to own a car, I mean, it's really, I wondered if we wanted to raise the fee to $5, but no, the fee isn't.
That's one of the options that we can also look at in our evaluation. It's set at $3 per ride, and from what I understand, that fee hasn't been raised in possibly 10 years, so we can look at that as well.
Yeah, I would rather be able to offer more rides for the same amount of money. I'm worried that it's becoming to the point where we're talking about limiting rides, which I don't think any of us want to do. And this might be an opportunity. I think we were all given a little bit of a shock with the numbers that came in. I was doing some research for another situation, but there's a service in California that uses technology called GoGo Grandparent that's worth looking at, but it's essentially it's a hotline that you talk to a person that then does the Lyft and the Uber for you. And I don't have a good sense of what the Uber rates are around town, but if you could get a ride, some of these rides for $4 to $5, then this is a way to expand it to almost everybody. And so you don't need a smartphone. But I just feel like we're at the cusp of so many changes right now. We might want to just take a big step back and look and see what other people are doing and what the options might be so that we can broaden the service without breaking the bank.
I believe we had a sort of similar discussion when we talked about the morning commuter part of the freebie bus. And I think when we discussed that, someone pointed out that there is a municipality in New Jersey that is actually paying for Uber to get commuters to the train station.
Yes, I read about that.
I was gonna.
But I just
let
think, I
Susan
mean,
then-
Mayor, I'm a little troubled. I would hate for the message to be out there that we're thinking about ways to expand the number of rides. I mean, the reality is that we need to manage this better. And we need Susan as a partner to help us do that. That I think that's just the reality, that we're paying a lot, and yeah.
Right, but there might be a way where you have residents picking up the cost of it and we facilitate. Like if we're
fair.
paying for a hotline service, then we could potentially provide for a lot more rides for less expense. So I think it just depends on how I agree with you. If we're paying $11 per ride, we need to talk about limiting rides. I'll turn it over to Sue.
Thank you. Susan Hoskins, Princeton Senior Resource Center, we manage this contract for the municipality and have for 5 or 6 years. And I just wanted to respond to a few things. I think that, first of all, the Crosstown program has really been a model program as an age-friendly community. And we need to remember that many, many of the riders who use Crosstown are seniors who don't have a smartphone, let alone a computer, and they are using this because they do not drive. That's one of the requirements for the program. These are people we don't want driving on the streets, but they need to go grocery shopping, they need to get to medical appointments. My understanding, Mr. Miller, is that an Uber ride in this town averages $14. So it's roughly the same. And that's come up in the meetings that we've had. The focus group that we had last week with some older adults who were interested in evening transportation said that they had had difficulty with short Uber rides at night. And the thinking is that the daytime may be even more difficult. But I think that looking at this, having this come to our attention and looking at it, has also made us put on our creative thinking caps and say, what can we do so that we can continue to provide this really valuable service? And I think several good suggestions have come up so that Deanna and Mark and I can work on those and find a way to continue the program to serve those very needy residents with your approval of this ordinance, whatever it's called. Resolution, thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, Ms.
Just also, and I think it may be still applicable here. I know that there was a time where the drivers for Crosstown had to go through sensitivity training. It was a sensitivity kind of training of the people that they would pick up. So it wasn't just like a regular person jumping in a car, going to pick up someone. They had a little bit of training in how to deal with various situations.
Right.
And that separates that from Uber, separates that from Lyft. So all those things that we have to keep in mind, it's not, just a person like we are half the time sitting there. Sometimes they may be a little,
Right. I think those of us who were around when it was run
yeah,
differently by a different provider
yeah.
know the difference in terms of the courtesy, in terms of the special attention. If you come with 2 grocery bags, they're carried to your front door. Your walker is put in the trunk, those kinds of things that are unusual and need that kind of special training that Greater Mercer and PSRC have done for the drivers. And our residents, part of the reason I think that the utilization is up is because it is such a reliable service and people really trust it and they like the drivers. They know that when they get dropped off, that driver will come back within 15 minutes of when they said and pick them up again. And that's not something they have with many of the other transportation services and is very important to our riders. So
Okay,
I hope you will support it.
thank you. All right, well, I think the motion is on the table. So if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously, but conversation to be continued. And Resolution 17-77, resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Enterprise Network Resolutions Contracting LLC for the environmental cleanup of soil at the vacant Valley Road Municipal Site, Block 7002, Lot 1, in the amount not to exceed $215,460. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Crumiller and seconded by Mr. Miller. Is there any discussion on this? Or Ms. Stockton, do you want to enlighten us at all?
No? Let's just-
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1778, resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Mazza Mulch Incorporated for the Cherry Valley Tree Removal Project in an amount not to exceed $42,249.88. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Liverman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1779, resolution authorizing an agreement with Transloc Incorporated for the installation and 5-year operation of GPS transponders in the 2 freebie buses in an amount not to exceed $22,000. Moved by Ms. Crumiller. Is there seconded by Mr. Miller?
Can I ask a quick question about this, Jenny? Are you going to, is this going to be helpful to the people that use the freebie?
I
mean,
hope
we just
so.
heard that many of them don't have, many people who use these services don't have smartphones or.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, but one of the things that's good about it is that it's going to be in the same system as the Tiger Transit, so it's a step toward integrating Tiger Transit with the freebie, so there's a chance it could help increase ridership on the freebie and make it easier, but
And this is being paid for a grant through the MOU money through the
Right.
Transit Trust Fund.
Right, but that's not free. That's money
Right.
that we wouldn't
Could
have.
go
just-
somewhere else, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, we'll give it a try.
A lot of the people riding the freebie bus are teenagers too, and they mostly have the smartphones. So, yes.
but I agree, I think it is a concern.
Yeah.
I can speak on this one too. Again, the comment I would make is that while a number of our older seniors do not have smartphones, more and more people are getting them. More of our riders are, but many of our riders are getting on at places like Elm Court and our building where they get pretty concerned when the bus doesn't come on time. And even if they don't have a smartphone, someone in the office can then find out where the bus is. We've been having problems with who knows where the bus is. It's not me. Is it Greater Mercer? Is it Stouts? Is it the driver? And I think this will make it easier to allay people's concerns about whether they missed the bus.
Also, I do think more older people are getting smartphones. I know the woman who's on our committee, who's an older woman who's a freebie rider, has a smartphone, and my mother, who's 85, has a smartphone.
All right.
Thank you.
You have
All
a
in
smart
favor?
family.
I have a smartphone.
Is there any further discussion? This has been moved and seconded, right? I think so. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 1780, resolution authorizing the purchase from Timurin Equipment Company through Mercer County Co-op, number CK09 Mercer 2016-24, for an Alltech Industries Incorporated model LR7 60E70 aerial lift tree truck for use by the Department of Public Works in the amount of $232,156. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Ms. Crumiller.
Mark, just a quick question, was this in the budget? I mean,
It was approved in last year's capital budget.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I'll remind my colleagues, we have just purchased another piece of equipment for $225,000,
Well,
232.
222, which we will store outside.
All right. Or you can park it in Mr. Miller's garage. All right, Resolution 1781. Resolution awarding an extraordinary and specifiable services agreement to Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates Incorporated for a parking study entitled Princeton Parking, Inventory, Analysis, and Recommendations to Support Economic Growth, in an amount not to exceed $76,881. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously.